This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Well, actually, it's the Love and Woron Hour, formerly Joe Martek, who may or may not ever be heard from again.
If the Bahamian government lets him go.
Yeah, well, that's been the question for the last decade or so.
Well, I hope the Bahamian government lets him. Premier insurance agent is with me today, and our great producer is Greg Wyatt. And I'd like to start off today by talking about a subject that has nothing to do with Team Martek per se, but it is a financial matter, and it's the baseball schedules have been released. Do you know that, Greg?
Who cares?
Who cares?
Are they going to let people in the stands?
No, probably not.
Players.
Just players.
Just players.
How about umpires?
You know, nobody's even talked about the umpires. They're standing right over the catcher's
Of
bat.
course.
I don't know how that's going to work. I'll be honest with you. Now that everybody's getting in the bubbles, if you will, baseball. Actually, I've got to go in there and put together my old sports schedules again. Baseball starts on the 23rd with the Marlins. In typical fashion, we have no Mets schedule yet, so it's we'll play it by ear of the Mets. But Marlins start on I think it's 23rd. Yeah,
24th, I believe, Greg.
Is it 24 at Philly or something? Yeah.
Yep.
Now,
24th at Philly.
Do you think you're going to see, as we saw after the big, great baseball strike, a tremendous decline in viewership over the next year, maybe because of this?
The Gallup surveys already are not showing anything positive for baseball. It's serious stuff, man. They shot themselves in the foot big time. And in the collective bargaining, the new television contract, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Television will not be the golden goose that everybody thinks it is, just because it's all fractionalized now. Oh, well.
So you think this will perhaps drive down the salaries over time because the teams can't afford it with the revenue they don't get?
Well, that's a whole different thing. I mean, baseball is less dependent on crowds than any other sport.
What are they dependent on?
Television.
Television.
TV revenue. Yeah. But it's different now. It's really different. Alan, I think your favorite team, the Milwaukee Brewers, they're in a perfect market because there's nothing there. So, their television ratings are going to be great. Well, I'm not sure about the rest. I'll be honest with you. I am not sure about the rest. There's no buzz whatsoever in New York City.
Yeah.
And everybody's been talking about the Yankees.
Well, it's going to be an interesting season. As a matter of fact, you just brought up the Yankees. The Marlins end the season with a 3-game series at Yankee Stadium on the 25th, 26th, and 27th of September. And interestingly enough, an oddity in the scheduling is the fact that the Milwaukee Brewers open the season at the Chicago White Sox for 1 game on September 22nd, and then have 2 days off, and they play the Cubs for 4 games. And it's a very interesting, going to be an interesting season because of the uniqueness of it. That
Field of Dreams game. I can't wait to see that game.
The central divisions of both leagues are playing each other. The eastern divisions of both leagues are playing each other. And the western divisions of both leagues are playing each other. And Manfred has said he'd like to make baseball more geographic. I wonder if that will hold if we have a full season in 2021.
Well, the interesting thing, and you're already hearing the sniping from the players. What do you mean we have to take a bus from Philadelphia to D.C.? There's no way in hell. Well, guess what, guys? This is, wake up to the real world now. This is not,
planes are flying.
You're not going to hop on your charter planes all the time. So, it's interesting. And the other thing is, where is Toronto playing? Does anybody know? I don't think they're playing in Canada. So are they playing in Buffalo?
I don't know, but I will check it out.
Yeah.
Now, see, I can tell you guys are fans from what you just said. Listen, I don't even watch it till the playoffs, and then I'll watch the end of a couple games, and then when the World Series comes on, I probably watch the last part of the game. But I know there are people out there who love this game and they follow it. So yeah, it's going to be a big change in the culture as we move forward.
Well, one thing that isn't going to change is our phone number. If you'd like to participate, our number is 772. That's the area code 340-1590. Be happy to take your questions for the team, and I've introduced Dan as our wonderful insurance guru, and also members of the team that are not present today. But Victoria Loyd, our real estate agent extraordinaire, will be calling in. She told me that about 2 minutes before showtime. Victoria works for Remax Realty of Stewart, and then we have Trust and Estates attorney Greg Fasula, and we have, of course, Mike Paulus, a wonderful mortgage broker, and Mike is helping a lot of people with interest rates down at record lows now. Mike actually talked about the fact last week that one closing was at 2.5% on a 30-year mortgage.
Wow.
Just unbelievable. And
I remember ours was, what was it, 18%?
Stagflation with Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter in the 70s. Oh my
God!
God!
We had to have creative financing back then.
Oh man!
And then the banks threw on the due on sale clause to end that, which said when you sell it, you can't finagle it. You've got to be done with it. You couldn't, the owner couldn't hold the note, not let us know.
Well, then we started Prop 13 in California during that whole mess. It was like, what else can happen to us? Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, look what's happening now. Make sure that was easy. That was easy.
Oh.
But, I heard coming up here today that mortgages and sales of homes are up between 30 and 40% each from this same time last year. So there's definitely a pent-up demand for either refinancing based on the wonderful interest rates we have, or the purchasing of homes, new and or existing homes. There's a big demand for that.
Okay, now MSNBC and CNN are saying the home markets are collapsing.
Well, then you have two different sides of the coin.
It's like, where is this going? It's
now what you may see collapsing is the inability to continually raise prices up to the point where no one can qualify. See, and we saw that here in Port St. Lucie, where we had houses go from 100,000 to 150 to 200. Now they're at 300,000 on that same house, and people cannot afford, based on income to debt ratios, to even get in the door. And there's very few houses being built in Port St. Lucie today that are under 300,000 because it's just hard to find in any of these new communities extremely reasonably priced homes. So if you're going to look for a more reasonably priced home, it's probably not a new home.
Okay. Interesting.
Of course, there is one other team member on the team, but his name is Joe something. I can't remember. He's been gone so long, but he's in the Bahamas, so we'll talk about him later. But Dan, you just mentioned buying homes, and we've just started the 2020 hurricane season, and I thought it might be a good idea to talk a little bit about flood insurance. What's available, what's not available, how do you get flood insurance, from whom, is there a state program, is there a federal program? So can you take the ball for a few minutes, Dan?
I can, Al. I mean, there's lots of different things that you threw into that bailiwick of questions. So here's what I would tell you. If you have an existing home and you don't have flood insurance, it normally takes 30 days from the time you walk into the office, sign all the paperwork for the policy to go into effect. That's a federal flood policy. And the federal government bases their premiums on where you live in proximity to a floodplain and how high the elevation of your house is in that floodplain area. And the higher you are, the cheaper it is, because that means that it's more unlikely that your home will be subject to flooding because you're higher and higher and higher. All right. Now, there are X areas which says we're not touching it. All right. So
Is that on the beach?
Usually on the beach, not all, but on some. So you need to know that if you're looking to buy out there, and if you're thinking about getting flood insurance, maybe you should look into that before you sign on the dotted line. All right. Now
how do condos on the beach handle
well, most
that?
of them are built on an X area.
Okay.
All right. And you do have private insurance. Private insurance companies also offer flood. And this came about because almost every 2 to 3 years, the federal government says, we're done with that flood program. We're not doing it anymore. All right. And now that throws everything into a flux. Where am I going to get it? The Fed's not offering. What's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. So the Fed has been trying to push that into private sector for quite a while. And they have succeeded in some of the private sector homeowners insurance companies allowing you to add a flood endorsement to your homeowner policy. Now, they're not going to do that when the hurricane's offshore. All right, and the best time to do it is when you take out your homeowner policy. And some companies say you can add it at renewal. All right, and it's actually more inexpensive. It's actually less money than the federal program. And in many cases, you can buy a higher limit of insurance because the federal government limits it to $250,000 on the structure and $100,000 on the contents. All right, so we always encourage the people to buy flood insurance, even if they're not in a flood zone, because there's a huge percentage of flooding that occurs annually in non-flood zones. So like I tell my customers, Florida is just a 65-mile wide sandbar, and every place you live in can flood. If it's a couple $100, you might want to consider it. The federal flood program has some very funny rules, like if it floods, it can't just be your house. There has to be a flood that affects a certain amount of acreage. All right.
So they might not pay off.
They may. Usually you can fight for that, but I'm telling you, they have some funny little rules in there.
Sounds like the unemployment program.
Yeah. So, yes, flood insurance, in my opinion, is a necessity for most houses. And you have to understand that we're not talking about wind-driven rain here. Wind-driven rain would be, let's say we had a opening in your home, the roof blew off, a window got blown in, and now the wind drives the rain in your house for half a day. That's not a flood. That's wind-driven rain. When we talk about flood, let's talk about Noah. Remember the old story of Noah and the ark, and it rained and rained and rained? Well, that's what a flood's going to do. It's going to rain and rain and rain. The water's going to fill up your culvert and your ditch. It's going to come up your driveway. It's going to come to your front door, and now it's going to seep in your door. That's a flood, folks. That's a flood.
That's Hope Sound.
That's Hope Sound. That's flooding. If it's because the wind blew the rain in your house, that's not considered flooding. All right. So that's going to throw it back to your homeowner's insurance. All right. And as you recall, when we've had major flooding during hurricanes, sometimes we get finger pointing where the Fed says, ho, ho, that's not us. That was because the window blew in and your house got full of water. And the homeowner says, no, it's the Fed. It's the Fed's program. They have to take care of that. Eventually, you'll get paid, folks. Just don't hold your breath. It does take time. So if you can get a policy with the flood endorsement, there's no one else to blame. It's all them. And so I encourage that. And that's a relatively new thing. And not every company offers that. So ask your agent, hey, does the company I have, do they offer flood insurance? And if they don't, do you have a company that perhaps does? That'd be my advice.
Okay, so let's say that your house is flooded and you do have flood insurance. Obviously, you're going to have to clean it up and refurbish it. How quickly do the insurance companies pay on flood insurance?
Well, they pay relatively quickly, but here's what I always tell my clients, which I think is a good rule of thumb. Act like you have no insurance. Now, what do I mean by that? If your house is flooded, and if you're physically able, don't do nothing. Try to soak up that water. Try to get a shop vac. Try to get some fans on it. Yes, your insurance company is going to get involved. They're going to bring in a water remediation company to clean up your house. All those things will be done, but the more you can do yourself, the least amount of time you have for damage, and the damage that I'm concerned with is mold. Because most homeowners insurance don't have unlimited mold coverage. They have a limited amount of mold coverage. So if you wait around to do nothing for 10 days until they get around to doing something, you may have the start of mold, and if you do, it may exceed your limit. So what would I do if it was my house? Here's what I would do, all right? First, I would get and find a way, if I could, to sop up the water. I have a shop vac, I would use that. If you don't have a shop vac, maybe you have a friend or neighbor who has one, but be aggressive and try to take care of this if you can. If you can get a box fan, if you don't have a fan, get a box fan and blow it. Turn your AC down low to keep the humidity factor down in your home. All right, here are the next steps if you're able. This is what I would do. Since I still physically can, I would take the baseboards off of my wall, at the bottom of my wall. I would drill small holes where the baseboard was so I can get air into that wall cavity. I want to dry out the inside of my wall, because what's on the inside of your wall? Paper. Sheetrock has paper on the back of it, and paper is a great source of food for mold. So you want to try to retard that by getting it dried off. All right, now if you were my customer, if I had them available, which I have 4 of those large commercial fans. I would bring them to your house, and we would wait until one of these companies came in and I'd take mine back. But the faster you can address it, the better off you're going to be. So act like you don't have coverage. Be aggressive if you can. Sop up the water. You might have to take your carpet out if you're able. If you know that carpet and that padding is done, don't throw it away. Insurance company's going to want to see it. You can roll it up. You can take pictures of it. I'm just trying to tell you how to be aggressive. What an insurance company doesn't want is to come to your house. You have taken all your furniture, thrown it away, rolled up your carpet, pitched it into the dump, took every bit of sheetrock off your walls, and said, here's what I have left for you. That's not going to be a good picture for you. They want some sort of justification as to why you did all those things. If your sheetrock on your walls needs to be replaced, it may not be the full 8 feet. It may only be the first 4 feet. I have seen the company say, we don't need to take the other 4 feet up, because as you know, they turn sheetrock on its side and they're 4 feet high. So I've seen them do that. But if you are super aggressive, and I have seen that happen after hurricanes, those claims have taken me an extremely long time to settle. There's a tremendous amount of, why would you I've even seen people take their toilets out. Why would you gut out your house, other than the fact that you want to totally remodel it? And now we have to probably go to mediation. So there are things that you should do aggressively, and there's things you probably should not do that could put you in a position of the insurance company saying, we need to look at this a little longer. Don't do that to yourself. If you have an agent, which you should have, you should call them and say, hey, I have mold growing all over the place. I need to get this out of my house. Is it okay if I do that? If he says, yeah, go ahead and do that, document that. Document your conversation. All those things are important during a time when we have a catastrophe, because you as a client of an insurance company have an obligation within your contract to try to mediate the damage and make it as low as possible. You are not supposed to say, hey, I don't have a partner in this. It's all on them. You have to try. Let me give you another example. Let's suppose you had a window blowout. If you can figure out a way to get a piece of plywood over it to make the damage less, you should try to do that. If you're not physically able, you can call a contractor to come out and do that. We want you to try and mediate the damage so the insurance company doesn't have to pay out any more than they should. That's part of your contract. But if you're not able, then you're not able. Me personally, I would try. And Alan, not to get too far off the subject, but when Nancy and I, a couple years ago, there was a big hurricane over there in St. Thomas area. Part of it is Dutch, part of it is French. The Dutch side was up and running. On the French side, they were still waiting for the government to come in and fix everything. Now, I'm talking about people have done nothing. And so I'm driving around with them, and I asked the driver, I go, why do they not try to do anything? They don't clean up anything. They don't try, they just left it. He goes, eventually the government will fix it. And I told him, I said, you know, from my perspective as an American living here in South Florida, we go through this a lot. We're very proactive. We try to take care of our stuff. You know, we try to look out for our neighbors. You know, there are things that, you know, we try to do. We don't wait on the government. So that's my advice, is do whatever you can. If you can't do anything, try to hire someone to help you. But the goal is to try to make it as low a dollar amount as possible by being proactive.
But you look at like Mexico Beach, and it still looks like a battle zone.
And it will. It probably will for a long time.
And from, you know, I've been told by some people who've been working with insurance companies that it's just finger pointing.
It's finger pointing. So, you know, when you hire me to go to work for you, what I used to tell my clients, and I still try to tell them this today, I cannot guarantee you'll be the first person serviced. I can't. But I can guarantee you won't be the last. I will be very proactive. I know who the managers are. I know who the service people are. In fact, I have a list of all my clients who are over the age of 70. And if you're my client and you're over the age of 70, I really push the adjuster to you quickly, not saying that you're any more important than my younger clients, because you're really not, but you're more, you're a very delicate part of my portfolio. The mortality rate of elderly people who go through the stress and all of the problems after a hurricane is much higher than my younger clients who can weather the storm. I look like we have somebody on the phone. We have Victoria.
Yeah, we do indeed have someone on the phone, and it's our great real estate agent, Victoria Loyd. Good morning, Victoria. Victoria, are you there?
Hello, Vicky. Well, she's gone.
Well, she can call back. Anyway, Dan, that was just terrific.
Great call, Victoria.
That was a terrific primer on flood insurance, and I do have one more question. Let's say your home gets flooded, and your car is in the garage, and the garage also gets flooded.
Well, that's a relatively easy question. The first thing I'm
Okay.
going to ask you, Alan, is your car tagged?
Is it registered?
Is there a tag
you mean?
and registered?
Yeah.
Then
Yes.
there's no coverage under your homeowners.
Okay.
How is that for a quick answer?
Well,
If
what
you're-
about your auto insurance?
Well, if you have comprehensive and collision,
Okay.
or comprehensive, yes, it would be covered as a flood.
Okay.
All right. Here are the problems that I've had here in the past. We've had clients out in St. Lucie West when they had torrential rains. They drive through the road and they get stalled and they get flooded out.
Okay. It appears that Victoria is going to be back with us momentarily. If you want to participate, our phone number is 340-1590, 340-1590. Greg is just putting Victoria up. And Victoria, are you with us?
I am. I was on hold, and I apologize, but my phone's ringing off the hook, so I had to hang up there. So I'm calling in to say things are going well in real estate. People are still looking. And we got a lot of people that are moving up from the Miami area, Fort Lauderdale area, and the New York area still. So people are still making changes.
Well, I know last time we talked, Victoria, you had indicated that you thought we were getting actually more new residents moving in from South Florida than we are from the Northeast. Is that still holding true?
I'm seeing that still, yes, right now. But I do know that there are a lot of people that are from the New York area that are contemplating on moving to this area. And I do have some people from Maryland also that are making changes, and I had somebody from Millville, Delaware. So we
Wow.
are getting a little mixture of different areas
Now,
that
Victoria,
I hadn't seen before.
Victoria, do you think that in addition to the bad weather and the political unrest in some of these larger areas in the Northeast, do you think the fact that they can no longer write off more than $10,000 on their property taxes is a great motivator for them to come down? Because, most of the houses in that part of the country are way over $10,000 in annual property taxes.
Yes, I believe that's some of it. You know what's funny, Dan, what happens is, and I've seen this, I saw it with 9/11, I saw it with the storm up north with Sandy, that those types of traumas finally make people make the move. It's not like they haven't wanted to do it for a long time, because they have, but it's when situations like this happen, they make that final decision, I'm ready to make that move.
And I can understand that. I understand that. We have things, and that's been our home for a long time, and we hate moving. But after a while, it gets to the point where you say, you know what, there's been enough decisions made for me and showing me I need to go, and I'm going to go. And let's face it, this part of Florida is such a fantastic value for people moving out of more expensive areas. Port St. Lucie is an extremely Treasure Coast and Port St. Lucie, extremely affordable housing.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the next thing I was going to say. So when I do my research and I start looking, so I'm just going to use something like, because Miami has beautiful homes and condos, but yet they have some of these smaller 2-bedroom, 1-bath, just the carports that were built many, many years ago in Florida, when people would just come for the winter months. So those particular homes are on the market now for like $288,000, close to $300,000. A 2-bedroom, 1-bath, under 1,000 square feet. So if somebody comes here and decides they want to buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath with a carport in our area, we're under $200,000.
Oh, sure.
So I feel that a lot of the people are saying, hey, let me make a move, let me sell something, and then let me go to that area, and then I'll have a little bit of cash in my pocket on top of it. Plus, it's not as expensive to live, even from the Miami-Dade area.
Right. And, people have to understand that when you're moving into an area, or areas like the Treasure Coast, we do have a lot to offer, but we don't have huge downtowns and, gigantic museums and things. We have, smaller museums. We have, some community theater and stuff. It's not for everybody, but if you can adapt yourself to what we have to offer, I think it's a magnificent quality of life.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. But it does take that person, and I think they need to think that out. It's like buying a puppy.
Yes.
So remember that puppy's going to grow up, and it's going to change, and it's going to require a lot of attention. So sometimes when people make the move and they realize that it is a lot quieter here than it is in that area, they can't just run down the street and have restaurants after restaurants and places to give you your espressos and your coffees that you have. So we are more limited in that aspect. Like you say, as long as they can slow down a little bit, then they'll be happier.
But we offer a great quality of life up here. I mean, as you know, I moved up here. There were only 7,000 people that lived in the city of Port St. Lucie, and I moved out of West Palm because I thought it was too crowded. So we moved up here, and over time, much of South Florida is slowly following us up here, because to me it's a better quality of life, especially if you're looking for a quieter way to live and not have so many concerns about all of the urban sprawl. But if you think about it, Victoria, what we have on the books, and we have platted out going west of town with Del Webb and all these big communities, our little town will change dramatically over the next 10 to 15 years.
Oh, absolutely, and it already is. I mean, when I moved here in '77, we didn't even have a mall.
Yes, I remember that.
Down by Indian Street, we had the Treasure Coast, not the Treasure Coast, but the Martin Square Mall, which when you walked in it, you had your candy store, your shoe store, your movie theaters, everything where Home Depot is now in one place. So when I came from a metropolitan area that had everything in the world, and I came here, I was like, oh my gosh. And there were a few people that said to me, if you're not happy, then just leave. And I said, you know what? I really love it here. So you have to really readjust from where you come from to enjoy it.
Well, I always tell new clients, try to live a Florida lifestyle, especially if, let's say, you move down here and you have no family. All right. And a lot of people start out that way. It's a husband and a wife. They move down here. I always tell them, hey, you know what? You have to get involved with life. Life is not going to come knocking on your door to become your friend. You're going to have to get out there and put yourself out there to get to meet people, get involved with the church, get involved with some civic organizations, do all the things to help you live that better lifestyle and learn to do things that we do here in South Florida. It could be fishing, it could be boating, it could be golfing or tennis. There's all kinds of things. But if you just sit at your house and watch Let's Make a Deal and the Price is Right, the Grim Reaper will come faster than you realize.
Well, Dan, I've said this many times before. We'll go to a closing. Let's use this as a prime example. Let's say that the sale was in Port St. Lucie, and I take them over the bridge to have a closing in the Stewart area, and they'll go, oh, my gosh, I didn't know we had this little downtown area. I didn't know that this restaurant was here. And here they're leaving and moving away because you're right. They didn't get off that couch.
Yeah,
they
and
didn't
that's
go
sad.
Look around and explore like they were supposed to. And they go to areas that really don't suit them. And I have that with a client now that he was born and raised here in this area, but he's coming back. He had moved a little further north in Florida, but then he found the health system there. It doesn't take his insurance. It doesn't offer him as much in the health department as he needs at this time. So he's coming back.
Yeah, you have to do your due diligence when you're retired. Healthcare is a paramount concern for many people, and luckily for us, in my opinion, we have a very good health system between St. Lucie and Martin County. But I will tell you, we do have some great specialty hospitals in Gainesville with Shands and down in Miami. So you can get to some very, very highly sophisticated programs in a short period of time. So yeah, we do pretty good job with our health care here.
Oh, absolutely. 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 Somebody in front of me just stopped short to decide whether they want to go down that street or
Probably
not.
one of my clients.
It was
Oh my God! What's that? Why you were calling us talking about insurance?
Victoria. It would seem to me that one of the benefits of being a real estate agent in this area is the health facilities that we have.
Oh, absolutely. They do take all that into consideration.
And are you still going at a 24/7 pace?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well-
In this business, you have to, because when people decide. I mean, I had people calling the other night, and it was very late here, but not late where they were, and I answered my phone, and I was talking to them, and it was a house that I already had under contract, and he says, I don't care. My girlfriend wants that house. And I went, well, I'll call you if something happens, but he says, no, my girlfriend wants that house. But some people do call at different hours of the day. I think they were calling me around 11:30 at night, but it wasn't their time.
They probably were not expecting you to answer the phone. They were going to leave you a message. They were surprised.
He was surprised, to be honest with you. He was very surprised. But I always answer my phone. If I'm available, I definitely answer my phone. I tell people, if you've left me a message and I don't call you back, I didn't get it. Let's put it that way.
There you go.
Well, Victoria, thank you so much for your call. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye to you?
No, I think that we're doing fine. And I think the only thing is, and I don't know if Mike has called in, but the lenders, and it's not Mike, but it's the lenders are taking a little longer now because of the virus to get, our approvals done.
Mm-hmm.
So people that are in underwriting and we're waiting for answers back on loans, they are taking longer than normal at this time.
I have heard that. I have heard
And
that.
you mentioned Mike, and of course, Mike really should be the first step because a person needs to know how much they qualify for as far as buying a home, and then they. Mike gives them the figure that they qualify for, and then they can come to you, and you can help them to get the home within that range. Is that how it works, Victoria?
It does. And I have talked to people, and I asked if they've been pre-qualified. And I don't ask that because we're trying to be nosy, but it's the absolute truth. A lot of people think they need a lot more money than they need to close. Some people think that their credit score is not good enough, but it is good enough. So it's just our way of reconfirming to these people. So I do it like this. Alan, you're going to ask me to take you to look at these homes, and you're going to absolutely fall in love with one of them. And when you do, and then we go to try to get the loan for you and try to get you pre-qualified at that time, then that house could be gone. The other thing is, before you really look at a home, the sellers want to know that you have been pre-qualified before you come and look at their property.
Well, Victoria, thank you for joining us, and be well and stay well.
Stay
and
safe out there.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm trying. I'm wearing my mask everywhere, guys. So
All right.
you guys be safe too.
Looking forward to the next time. Take care.
All right. Take care now.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Victoria.
Okay, our phone number, if you wish to participate in the last quarter hour of the show, is 340-1590. And Greg, we had a question about the Toronto Blue Jays when we started talking about baseball.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't give an actual location schedule, but there was nothing in two news articles that I read about their schedule that they were going to play anywhere else but their home ballpark in Canada. So.
Oh, okay. Well, their prime minister was banning all U.S.
So if you
travel.
said we're only going to play on our home field, that means no one will have any competition unless they have the same home field.
Well, this was, the banning Americans going into Canada and stuff like that.
No, the latest I heard is that there are some restrictions that have been lifted.
Some exceptions.
Yes.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's interesting how the schedule is going to be. Every team is going to play the four teams in their division 10 times, and in the other division, like if the Central Division is playing the Central Division of the American League and the Brewers are, of course, in the Central Division of the National League, what will happen is the Brewers will play one home-and-home series of 3 games each with one team from the American League East. They will play 4 games with 2 teams from the American League each, a 2-game home-and-home, and then they will play one team either at Miller Park in Milwaukee or at the other team's home ballpark, and they'll only play 3 games with that team, but that's how you get the 20 games for the other division, a total of 60 games, and then the playoff season will be extended. So that's
is that
how
all
it's gonna
designed?
Are
work.
you taking notes, Dan?
You know what? My brain has gone foggy already. So, are you saying that that's designed to minimize traffic? I mean, as far as travel time, since it's all in the same
A long travel.
Is
Yeah.
that
no coast-to-coast
Is that
travel.
the thinking behind that
Yeah.
strategy, Alan?
And before we leave sports, Dan, because I know we have other important things to talk about, one question for you, Greg. Patrick Mahomes, $1.5 billion?
Yeah. I knew somebody was going to get it.
Who's that?
He's
Quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Switching sports.
Hey, when they started having all those problems with the NFL a while back, I haven't watched them since. So I hate to sound totally ignorant, but I just don't care
what
anymore.
about the nicknames? What do you guys think about the nicknames?
You mean changing the names of the teams?
Mm-hmm.
If I was a long-term fan of a team that had that name, I'd be upset. Me personally. But luckily, I don't have any love affair with any teams. I don't care what they do. If you want to call themselves anything you want, I'm not going to watch you any more or less than I do now. That's me personally.
Well, you've got to really understand the facts. When I read a news story about a week ago saying that the number 1 name to change the Washington Redskins was the Washington Red Tails, I thought to myself, is that crazy or what?
Makes
That's even
perfect sense.
worse than the Red
No.
Is it like a
But
red tail hawk?
when you hear the history, that it was actually the first black Air Force
Yep.
contingent in World War II, and the reason they were going to be called the Red Tails was because the back end of the planes had a crimson color. It made perfect sense, and it's a great way to honor the Tuskegee Flyers.
I saw the new logo, and it looks awesome, and it's got it would be on the side of the helmets. It's got kind of an outline of old pilots, with the leather helmets and stuff, with the leather, and then you just see the W is very pronounced, kind of like what it would be with the Redskins. But, man, it's impressive. It is impressive.
What goes through the W are 3 sets of what look like wings.
Yes.
And that just makes it awesome.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to look like in print, but, boy, on a uniform or something like that, it would be very cool. But, it's I know some people got upset at Florida State, the Seminoles, until they started doing research that they have set aside millions of dollars for Seminole Indians for years, as has North Dakota State with the Fighting Sioux, where, there are some people that came out of the woodwork fighting against those things, and the Sioux tribe said, hey, time out. We get free tuition.
Well, here
You
would
know,
be my
so-
position would be this. If you were a Native American Indian, that's who I want to hear from. I don't want to hear from any other minority group who has any problem with it. I'd only want to hear from them, and I don't want to know what they think about it. If they feel it's an insult, then they need to talk with management. If, on the other hand, they think, hey, this signifies our tribe had brave warriors, well, maybe they don't take it the way somebody else does. Let the decision be made by that sector of society. That's my opinion.
And we have another call, and it's Pat on line 1. Good morning, Pat.
Hey, how are you? History. Down the rabbit hole we go. Why are we going down? Why are we even discussing this stuff? You can't control the cards you dealt. You learn it if you're smart. You learn to play cards better. But if you dealt a bad hand, and understand, that's all. That's all there is to it. Why are we going down a thing where we gotta hate everybody? A third of every race is idiots, and that's it. Enough. You owe me. I owe. Nobody owes anybody anything. Nobody owes anybody anything. Of course, people who make the laws have to be, under that guy too. But we're just having discussions about nothingness.
Well, Dan, Pat, to answer your question, this is radio, and if we don't find things to discuss, then we have dead air, and the listeners will turn away from us if they haven't already done so. But, you can discuss anything you want with us, Pat. Go right ahead if you want to.
Great.
Well, here's something to keep in mind, Pat. If you were to look at everybody you see every day of your life from this point on, here's what you have to keep in mind. Every one of them, every one of those people, within their family background, there was an enslavement to someone. Always has been, always will be.
Of course.
That's how society was. Today, our society does not tolerate that. There is no slavery, legalized slavery in this country. If we find anybody enslaving anybody illegally in this country, they need to be thrown in the deepest, darkest pit.
It was abolished in this country. It's many other countries still have it. There's been slavery since the beginning of time. People have argued.
Well, here's what I suspect. All right, there are legitimate people. There are people with legitimate concerns about how they perceive things to be. All right, and I don't deny that. But what we have to also understand is that there are people who unfortunately make a living out of being agitators and making problems in society. They make a living doing that. And they steal away. They steal away from the legitimate protesters who are trying to make our country better. Because isn't that the goal, to make your country better over time, not worse? And people who take an opportunity to make a living off that hate, I have no tolerance for.
Exactly. Those are the words of George Washington Carver. He said that there will always be people who want to keep the patient sick. And they always will make a great, great living off this by keep bringing up the same thing over and over and over. We know we've made horrendous decisions. Every country is forged in blood. We know we did this. We know we did that. This is where we are now. We have to live now. You can't change that, And it's very hard to talk to people when it's like a one-track mind. They're just playing the same thing over and over.
Well, Pat, I have found this to be true. I have had opportunities in my life to discuss many things that people think are taboo when you're talking with a black man or a yellow man or a white man. They shouldn't talk certain.
There's all sorts of ways.
And I can tell you that when I sit down and talk with them, I have wonderful interactions with these people. You'd be amazed what
I'm not
like minds we have.
I love people.
It's the professional agitators who stir up problems.
Absolutely. Amen to that. There's no question about that. The thing is, we got to get out of this hysterical state where, everybody lives forever and there's this perfect place somewhere. And, these things don't exist.
Well, there is. It's called heaven. And I believe in that too. I believe that we do have a creator, and one day I'll get there. But I'm not going to create that here.
Well, you're making some major assumptions there, Dan, that you're going to get there.
Well, that's true.
But
I could be looking the other way.
I'm more worried about Mr. Martek, to be honest.
Joe. Yeah. Well, you
great.
got to admit, man, that taking all 5 of your ex-wives on a cruise is kind of nice.
That's just in his memory.
Pat, we're running out of
Great
time.
character.
We're running out of time,
great.
Pat. I want to thank you for calling, and call next week
Thank
if
you.
you wish, and have a great
All right,
week.
great.
Anyway, Dan and Greg, I just want to say that hopefully Joe's had a wonderful 2-week vacation, and Joe will be back next week in this chair moderating. Hopefully he gets back safely and will return. And I just want to thank all of the listeners for listening in. Hope you enjoyed the last couple of weeks with Dan, who was here, and Greg, and the rest of Team Martek. Until next Wednesday at 11:06. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.